Hello, namaste, and welcome back to the podcast. I am Sheena Pillai, and today with me I have Dr. Maitri, who's a robotic and gynae oncosurgeon. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, thank you, Sheena.
So, today our topic would be robotic surgery and gynec oncology. So, ma'am, first of all, I would like to ask you a question. Like, in oncology, is robotic surgery a very new thing, or it has been there since long and nobody knew about it?
That's a nice question because I think there are a lot of myths associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the moment you hear oncology, the immediate reaction is to have fear or to be fearful. Especially in gynae oncology, robotic surgery was always there as a standard of care, I think, in the Western world. Of course, depends on the patient to patient and the stage of the cancer. But it wasn't as evidently practiced in our country.
Mm-hmm.
So to say in uterine cancer, which is one of the most common cancers in gynecological cancers, which is called as endometrial cancers. Now, as per the recent research and the data that is published, robotic surgery is the best and the safest way to go about it for the complete staging and cure of the cancer.
And if may I ask, how did you end up in a robotic surgery this setup? Like how did you find? Was it fascinating, or you wanted to do robotic surgery? Like how?
Yeah, I think that's quite a personal journey because to begin with, I think when we trained many years back in our residency, that is the basic gynecological training that all of us receive, it was all about open surgery. So even for simple cases like uterus removal or ovarian cyst, fibroids, we always saw the patients being admitted for 4 to 5 days. Recovery took weeks, moderate to good amount of pain was expected. And that is how we saw our patients recover. So it is always a big open scar and an open surgery. So after that, gradually I transitioned into minimal access surgery and I did my laparoscopic training first here in India. That is when it opened my eyes to, oh wow, so there is something called as minimally invasive surgery, which you can perform the same surgery you can perform in a minimally access manner. That means through really tiny ports, and the recovery was much faster. And after that, when I went to Mount Sinai, Toronto, Canada, especially for my robotic training, that is where things changed massively for me, because then I saw that robotic surgery was the standard of care there for their women, especially in gynecological surgeries. And the recovery was so quick, it was almost painless. Sometimes the patients were discharged on the same day, even after hysterectomy. So then I thought, why can't we offer the same thing back home? Why can't you do the same and offer the same for our women back home? And then after that, I went on and got my advanced training in robotics and gynae oncosurgery in South Korea for a year, and that's how the journey has started.
It's very interesting. And in India, see, abroad, I understand people are have money and they can afford it. But then in India, I feel that people think that it's just a luxury that
Correct.
not all of them can afford it.
Correct.
So, what do you have to say about it?
Okay, there are two things in this that I would like to address. The first thing is that, yeah, it is a common myth that we have in our country that it's a luxury. It's a marketing gimmick. Robot is for rich people, rich patients, things like that. So the first and foremost thing is that what I want to say is it's not a fancy tool. It's not a luxury. It's not like fancy equipment where the surgeon enjoys doing it. No. There are certain advantages that a robot offers which are unparalleled to the other technologies that we have. For example, if I have to point out the advantages where a robot works much more superior, is that it gives a three-dimensional vision. So without a good vision, even if you're a heroic surgeon, you're zero. You cannot perform that kind of a precise surgery that you would want to for your patient. The other advantage is that the magnification is so high, it's 10 to 15 times of what you would see in an open surgery. So, especially in gynecological surgeries, the operative area is very, very narrow. So, uterus, fallopian tubes, ovaries, everything lies in the pelvis. Operating in pelvis is like operating inside a tunnel. Everything is, so abdominal organs like say stomach, intestines, they're out in the front when you cut open. But pelvic organs are really in the depth. So it takes a lot of precision to operate close to the ureters, close to the bladder, close to the rectum down there, uterus. Otherwise, the chances of injuries to the surrounding organs are very high. So to increase the safety outcome for the patient, to reduce the blood loss and to take out the entire disease, it really needs there needs to be a good vision, a good magnification, which a robotic platform offers. Another thing that I would say is about filtration of tremors. So when you compare a traditional minimally access, that is a laparoscopic surgery, what we use are rigid instruments. They're like stick-like long instruments which the surgeon uses with her hands. So, you know, when the transition from open surgery to minimally access began, surgeons were a little skeptical about, you know, moving from that nice wristed knots and tying the knots in the pelvis to stick-like instruments, because it's difficult to learn how to operate complex surgeries with that. But now when robotic platform came in, we are back to those wrist-like movements, which offers equal amount of mobility to the surgeon to operate similar to what you would do with your hands in an open surgery. Plus your tremors are filtered. So the microcomputer, now you are a human. When you operate for very long hours and hold those long stick instruments, you're going to have some tremors in the hand, which is going to go on to the tissues of the patient, and you know, it's going to reflect into the patient having pain and bleeding. So that is reduced in a robotic platform. So there's humongous amount of positives that you have. And coming to the cost that you asked, cost-wise, so what is the reason that robotic platform has or had in the past when it was quite newly launched in India? The costs were, yes, they were much higher than the traditional surgeries. But now gradually, as you know, we have our own robots, plus the insurance companies are getting better with getting robotic surgeries included in their packages, plus hospitals offering and cutting down the cost for the robotic instruments. The entire cost estimate comes from the robotic arms, which are, it's costly to install them, it's costly to have them. That's why the cost was much higher. But now, in present, if you see and if you compare the cost of a 3D laparoscopic surgery and a robotic surgery for a complex gynecological case, it's almost the same. So that is a myth that patient needs to understand, that if you can pay the same amount of money for a good 3D laparoscopy, 4K vision, why not opt for a robotic surgery, which is definitely much superior in most of the cases.
Yeah, makes sense. And then how often do you suggest, since you're from an oncology department, I would also, you know, like to ask, like how often do you suggest for, you know, robotic instead of laparoscopy? Like how do you decide?
How do we decide? That's a good question, because it's not like every case demands a robot. You have to eventually, it's for the patient benefit. It's not for the surgeon.
Correct.
So the stage of the cancer, the type of the cancer, and the entire patient's file has to be checked to see if the patient is suitable to undergo robotic surgery. But like I said, for endometrial cancer, that is uterine cancer, robotic surgery is the way to go ahead. There are reasons for that, because most of the times endometrial cancer women are obese. They have a higher BMI or metabolic syndrome like diabetes, because these are all risk factors which increase the chances of a woman having uterine cancer. Now, with high BMI, that is obesity, and diabetes and other comorbidities, it is very difficult to operate either open or laparoscopic because the complications increase. The wound complications increase, infections increase, physical performance of the surgeon is decreased because of the complexity in traditional laparoscopic surgery in such cases. That is where a robot takes an upper hand. Also, in oncology, it doesn't end at removing the uterus or removing the tubes or the ovaries for that matter. There is something called as lymphadenectomies where we go in, where you can say it is something like the gatekeepers of immunity of the body. They're called lymph nodes. So they're there in your pelvis, they're there in your para-aortic areas. So this forms an important part of an oncosurgery. Okay, so in robot, there is something called as Firefly technology by which we can identify the green ICG dye that we put to pick up these lymph nodes. That is called sentinel lymph node biopsy. And take out the lymph nodes in such a precise and gentle manner that all the great vessels and nerves that are surrounding the lymph nodes are not damaged. So basically, I know this sounds very technical, but for patients to understand, it translates into a much safer surgery. And imagine doing a whole radical surgery through tiny 5 to 8 millimeter ports, like 5 ports. And despite an oncosurgery, you're up and about in few hours and you're discharged in 2 or 3 days. That's incredible, right?
It's very impressive. Making somebody, if you are a patient and you'll be thinking, oh, a robot is going to perform a surgery on me, and that's a very unique thing that people will go and tell everybody. So that's something which is very interesting. I feel that if it is very it's not very expensive though.
Yeah.
People can opt for it, and if it is offering you a very cheaper version of a luxury, definitely people should opt it.
Yes.
Few more questions I would like to ask. Since you're from the oncology, how often you see people with cancer, and how to reduce such events? Like if somebody is having a history of hysterectomy in the past, for like your mom or anybody. So was it because of cancer? Like how to check yourself for cancer in future?
So gynecological cancers are like a huge spectrum of disease all over, and screening them and coming to the screening part of it to check, like you asked. So it depends whether it is uterine cancer, whether it is ovarian cancer, whether you're talking about whether you fit in that genetic or hereditary cancer. So I think the first and foremost is there are 2 or 3 certain things that I would like to say, which that kind of awareness needs to come to every woman in our country. First is to screen for cervical cancers. Go in for regular pap smear screening and include a gynecological visit as a part of your annual health visit that you always plan. Usually people go for blood tests and sonographies, but it's never the gynecologist that is involved. So this has to be done. And if you have any kind of family history which runs in your family, whether it is breast or any gynecological cancers or some other cancers at times that can be related to gynecological cancers, just approach your gynecological oncosurgeon to understand the trend in your family and if it is actually something that you can prevent, because prevention of a cancer is most of the times not in your hand, except for cervical cancers, which is caused by a virus. That's why screening and vaccination is available, and it's the only cancer where you can actually give a vaccine to prevent the cancer. So 70 to 80% of cervical cancers are caused by human papilloma virus, which is a sexually transmitted infection, which can easily be treated just by taking a vaccine. Not treated, easily can be prevented by taking a vaccine. So yes, pap smears and vaccinations for cervical cancer perspective. For uterine cancer perspective, any kind of abnormal pattern of bleeding that you ever have which was not fitting into your normal frequency or the type of bleeding, you approach and check it out, especially if you are in that postmenopausal age group. then you need to get it checked. And from ovarian cancer perspective, there's no really a good screening test or a prevention that you can do. But if you have something running in your family, please approach so that you can go for preventive surgeries.
Yeah, because earlier there were no proper detection for this. So, we could hear that our grandmother or, her mother had done hysterectomy, and then, we may not be knowing what exactly they had. So
Correct.
now we have, a very advanced technology in which we can screen it.
Correct.
Hence, I asked you the question because I have my friends who are
Correct.
there who had, a history of, their mother had history
Correct.
of cancer. But then they are very scared. They are like, if मेरी मम्मी को था,
Correct.
is it that कि मुझे भी हो जाएगा?
Correct.
So, all these people have a lot of questions, and even I had this question.
Correct.
So, I think you have answered a lot of things that I had in mind, and I think all of you also. So, just a last quick question, one more. So, this oncology, I know it cannot be treated, but like you said, pap smear. So, is it a blood test, or what exactly is pap smear?
So pap smear is not a blood test. Pap smear is just a per speculum test. That means when you go for screening, when a gynecologist checks your cervix and vagina through a per speculum examination, and a swab or a smear is taken around your cervix, that is the mouth of the uterus. And it's an OPD based procedure, a very simple procedure, not a painless procedure. It doesn't need any kind of anesthesia, it doesn't include any cuts. You just take a smear and send it for a cytological examination to the pathologist. And then they go through the slide that they have made and they check out if there are any abnormalities in the cells. So it's a very simple test, and it should be done in all women, all sexually active women from the age of 30 till the age of 65, once in every 3 to 5 years, along with HPV DNA testing. So it's actually like a norm in other countries where you get phone calls from the government if you don't get it done regularly. We don't have that in our country, but I think at least we can be self-aware about it and start screening us.
So, doctor, what are the types of surgery that we offer in robotic surgeries?
In gynecology, robotic surgeries is offered in a lot of complex pelvic disorders. So it's not only about gynecological cancers, that is one part of it, but also in complex pelvic gynecological benign conditions, say large fibroids or pelvic infections or things which involves a frozen pelvis, that is in deep endometriosis cases. Everything is glued together. All the organs down there are glued together, and it's very difficult to approach them, and you really require a precise robotic arm to dissect things well. And and ovarian cysts, complex ovarian cysts. So there are a lot of conditions apart from a routine uterus removal surgery where robotic platform is used well in gynecology. And I wouldn't say that every simple gynecological case needs a robot, but you need to choose the patient, and if she fits in that criteria, you should definitely offer to her, because I think it's every woman's right to deserve the best of the options that are there for her. And now we have reached such a stage in our country where we do have all the best of the instruments and the technology which is at par with what you have in the West. So it's not like a couple of years back or a decade back where we were really lagging behind in robotic surgeries, and it was only a thing that we read in papers and channels that Western countries are doing that.
Correct.
So recently, to share an incident, so we had a patient who came down from Canada, so she's a Canadian resident, and she had really bad pelvic endometriosis, deep infiltrating endometriosis, which literally gave her a frozen pelvis, and she was very anxious and keen on fertility. And so you know how the waiting list works in Canada. She was put on a waiting list for 2 years.
Oh.
So she had a video consultation with us. We prescribed her the tests that were required. We studied her MRIs and everything. She came down. We, as a multidisciplinary team at Gleneagles, we offered her a robotic excision surgery for the endometriosis. She recovered fantastically well, had a baby within 1 year, and went back while she was still on the wait list in Canada.
Lovely.
So that is how the surgical expertise has grown in our country, and I think it's high time that people know that these options are available back home here for us.
It's amazing to know all these stories. So anything that you would like to tell our viewers regarding how to prevent or anything just to add on?
Prevent oncology?
Yeah, anything that they can take care of their health for in future. I hope we may not be able to prevent or for the cancer, but at least we can guide them accordingly.
Correct. So the first and foremost thing that I feel is that if you have in any other field, suppose if you have a lump on your hand, patients are very comfortable to go and get it checked, or they share. It's easier to relate to, and it's easier to go get yourself checked. What happens in a gynecological case is that most of the women are embarrassed of their complaints. It's difficult to share even with your own family members, even with your close ones, till they advance to such a level that then you reach the doctor. So most of the gynecological oncologies, or even for that matter benign cases like say grade 4 endometriosis, I know there's a lot of awareness about endometriosis going on nowadays because we just had endometriosis awareness month this March. Because the symptoms are such, it's either bleeding, it's dyspareunia, that means you have pain while intimacy and patients don't want to disclose that so easily, or there's some foul smelling discharge, there is urinary problems. They're not very easy to discuss with. So the first thing what I would say is that you should learn to stop being embarrassed about your complaints. It's high time that if you cannot disclose it to your family members, just get up and visit your gynecologist so that they can help you out, they can detect things in early stages. Like for robotic surgeries can be done in gynecological cases if you catch things earlier in oncology. For benign, yes, you can do them in all complex pelvic surgeries like for endometriosis. But yeah, so detection, stop being embarrassed about your complaints, reach early so that we can detect them early and treat them better, because then minimally access surgery is possible and cure is possible when you reach early, when you detect things early.
So I guess she answered a lot of questions and given you a very insightful, and everybody must have got a very, a deep knowledge about how oncology works, how robotic surgery works, and it's not an expensive thing though. So I would really thank you for giving us a great knowledge about everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Medicine Made Simple. Powered by Glen Eagles Hospitals, where good people make you feel better.